I'm John McKee, editor of Messianic Apologetics, Messianicapologetics.net. And I would like to welcome you to this episode of Messianic Insider, your theology and news roundup for June the 3rd, 2025. Of course, we continue to monitor various situations in the world. We appeal to the Lord for sanity to prevail, for peace to manifest. Are we ready for some significant drama to take place, or do we want to see various disasters averted? So there are a lot of things going on right now in our hearts and minds, and we will also be discussing some contemporary religious news later. Yesterday, with our news roundup, we had a lot of contemporary things to cover from the weekend, but today we have more religious-related news. But before we get into that, our theology roundup. If you'll turn with me to the Messianic Apologetics website, so messianicapologetics.net, click on the FAQs, Frequently Asked Questions tab. This is an archive of entries 2000 to 2018. Excuse me. Scroll down with me to the letter C. And here you see the entry, Church Missing After Revelation 4:1. So click that and a PDF file will open. All right, so one of the major theological controversies, certainly in evangelicalism, you can see it in parts of today's Messianic community, although it's not as prominent as it was 30 years ago, is the infamous pre- versus post-tribulation rapture debate. And there's no surprise that I am a strong post-tribulationist. In fact, our family transitioned into a post-trib eschatology right before the fall high holidays of 1995. So the pre versus post-trib rapture debate is intimately caught up with our Messianic experience. And to be certain, because of when we are right now in 2025, certainly since October the 7th, 2023, growing anti-Semitism, anti-Zionism, and now with some of these wars and rumors of wars, there are definitely people who are wondering, hey, what's going on? And that's a good thing. I definitely believe that we need to be paying attention. But, there are people who are wondering, well, are we getting close to the rapture? Is the rapture soon going to happen? And then others are like, wait a second, we've got to be a lot more serious about our faith. We're going to be enduring the end times. And pre-tribulationism is, I'll say this diplomatically, a misplaced hope. So, on the FAQ we're going to be going through today, it's not that long, but it is important. Church missing after Revelation 4:1. This is something I'm sure many of you have encountered if you've gotten into the pre versus post-trib debate at any time in your theological studies. So the question is, as post-tribulationists, how do you respond to the fact that the word church does not appear after Revelation 4:1? This means that the church is missing and has been raptured to heaven. I'm sure many of you have encountered that before. And a lot of people can get stumped with this. And some of the responses you can see in, say, the Hebrew Roots movement, like, oh, the church is in the book of Revelation. It's just called the whore of Babylon. That is not an answer. The answer pertains to the ecclesia. Are the people of God, the redeemed in Yeshua, are they present in the scope of the events of the book of Revelation or not? And indeed, people who hold to a post-trib eschatology have definitely had to sort through this. So how would I respond to this? In the opening chapters of Revelation, chapters 1 through 3, the Apostle John was given specific instruction by Yeshua the Messiah, which he was to deliver to the 7 assemblies of Asia Minor: Ephesus, Smyrna, Pergamum, Thyatira, Sardis, Philadelphia, Laodicea. After John relayed Yeshua's messages to these congregations, John was told by the Lord, "Come up here and I will show you what must take place after these things." Revelation 4:1b, New American Standard. Notice what John said as this command was given to him. "After these things I looked, and behold, a door standing open in heaven, and the first voice which I had heard, like the sound of a trumpet speaking with me." Revelation 4:1a, New American Standard. This was a directive which is given only to the Apostle John, as he was called to step into the heavenly realm and be shown a vision of the future which, as far as Yeshua and those assembled were concerned, had already taken place. John was asked to step forward in time and be shown things which he did not know about. This was not some command given to the church. To be sure, as Messianics are often keen to emphasize, the Greek word ekklesia should be properly translated as either assembly or congregation in our English Bibles, as opposed to the anachronistic term church. Likewise, ekklesia was used in the Greek Septuagint to render the Hebrew word kahal, referring to the congregation or assembly of Israel. And the apostolic writers most often use ekklesia with this understanding in mind. Now listen to me very carefully here. In Johannine literature, so John, the Gospel of John, 1st through 3rd John, the epistles of John, Revelation, ekklesia is never used to refer to the body of Messiah at large, but instead the localized assembly. Douglas J. Moo poignantly remarks in 3 Views on the Rapture, quote, "John himself never uses ekklesia other than as a designation of a local body of believers. Moreover, it is important to note that John never in chapters 4 through 19 calls any group in heaven the church," unquote. The reason why ekklesia does not appear after Revelation 4:1 is because the letters Yeshua had John write to the 7 localized assemblies of Asia Minor were complete. It was not because the church had somehow been raptured up into heaven. In fact, at the end of Revelation, readers witness how the apocalyptic revealing of Yeshua to John was for the ekklesia, indeed implying that the body of Messiah will be on earth when these events take place. Revelation 22:16, "I, Jesus, have sent my angel to testify to you about these things for the churches. I am the root and the descendant of David, the bright morning star." Revelation 22:16, English Standard Version. It is notable that there is an urban myth which frequently circulates among various Hebrew roots post-tribulationists relating to Revelation 4:1. It often goes along the lines of, "The church is mentioned after Revelation 4:1, and it is the whore of Babylon." I mentioned that earlier. Unfortunately, for those who adhere to this line of reasoning, it is not based in a sound exegesis of the text, neither in a sound examination of what end-time Babylon actually is. While there are religious elements of the end-time Babylonian system, there are also political and economic elements. To simply say that end-time Babylon is the church is to misidentify end-time Babylon, which is a multifaceted anti-God world system. So there you have it. There you have a post-trib answer to the claim from Revelation 4:1 that the ecclesia, the body of Messiah, is missing from the events of Revelation. Actually, ecclesia in Johannine literature, Gospel of John, epistles of 1st, 2nd, 3rd John, and the book of Revelation is used to speak of the localized assembly. Okay, so that finishes up our theology roundup for today. Please do keep your questions, your direct messages to me coming. They are taken seriously. And if there is a specific issue you'd like to see us talk about, we got a huge array of materials we can pull from and point you in the right direction, and even offer a little summary like we just did here. All right, we always do our news roundup after the theology roundup because, let's face it, all the news is time sensitive. And today we actually have more religion-related news than theology-related news. All of the links I'm about to go through, you will be able to see those archived on MessianicApologetics.net later today. So you can go read the articles, you can go watch the different things for yourself. All right, so here's we start out with an article from yesterday on Crossway. Can women serve as deacons? Arguments for and against. Now, what makes this article from Crossway so important? Well, Crossway is mainly known for being the publishers of the English Standard Version, the ESV Bible, and Crossway is known for being very strongly complementarian. So what that means is that only men can be ordained as elders, only men can be pastors of the ecclesia, pastors in the assembly. But here you have from Crossway an article which its author, Matt Smethurst, actually supports women as ordained deacons. And that's huge for someone from a complementarian perspective. Now, within today's Messianic community, every Messianic congregation I have attended or been a member of for 30 years has only had men occupying positions of elders and deacons. They might use the Hebrew zakanim or shamashim, but it's only been men. On very few occasions, maybe the wives of these leaders have been incorporated in a few meetings, but that is very scant. The Messianic community as a whole, although there are exceptions, you get out there in the world of ideas, you're going to see exceptions. On the whole, you don't see women occupying positions of leadership. But here from Crossway, which is a complementarian source, arguments for and against women as deacons. This is big because the younger generation leans much more away from the complementarianism of their parents. I mean, my egalitarianism is very well known. So yes, I believe women can serve as deacons. I believe women can serve as elders. I believe women can be ordained as pastors and rabbis. I have not hidden that for, what are we up to now? Since 2007. So that's 18 years now. Right now, one of my projects is to update our commentary, Pastoral Epistles for the Practical Messianic, which goes into a lot of this in more detail theologically. But this is a very interesting article. If you are curious about women in leadership, this is from a very strong complementarian source. And indeed, females occupying positions of leadership should not serve to the detriment of men serving in positions of leadership. But we should, because the Holy Spirit is gender blind, have much more of a gifts-based leadership model. And of course, theologically, you run into the question of whether the instructions in 1 Timothy chapter 3, if they are universal for all situations and settings, or if they were location specific to the circumstances Timothy was having to sort through due to the false teaching in Ephesus. That's a big one. But here's a good article I think many of you should probably read through. All right, from My Charisma. This is from yesterday, June the 2nd. Babylon is rising and Bible prophecy is coming alive. Now, we just went through the FAQ on church missing after Revelation 4:1. What do you do about the issue of Mystery Babylon in the book of Revelation? It's fair to say when you step back and you look at the Babylonian phenomenon in Holy Scripture, it is composed of political, religious, economic elements. It's ultimately the anti-God world system. Excuse me. All right. I'm sorry about that. It's ultimately the anti-God world system. And so along with that, the big question is not, are there elements of the end-time Babylonian system focused around Rome, possibly the Vatican? You see that in Revelation 17 and 18. But what do you do about Jeremiah 50 and 51, which would concern, ancient Babylon and Iraq, possibly? And so here you've got some discussion about, well, what do you do about Babylon, particularly in Iraq? And indeed, the discussion about Mystery Babylon is keep your options open. I'm inclined to believe that it's all of the above. It's not limited to one thing or another. But I do think that there is an element of end-time Babylon in Iraq which needs to be considered as we enter into the future. Okay, another article from My Charisma. King Charles helping set the stage for Antichrist's kingdom. Now, some of you all are doubtlessly familiar with how since the 1990s, mid to late 1990s, particularly with the book Antichrist in a Cup of Tea, there have been a lot of people out there who have thought that Prince Charles, now King Charles, is the beast. I'm not somebody who believes that, but there's no question that figures like King Charles and others are involved with the New World Order, the globalist agenda, the environmentalist agenda, etc. From the New York Post, June the 2nd. Ukraine was able to carry out its stunning Operation Spiderweb attack on Russian air bases and nuclear fleet by hiding explosives-laden drones in wooden sheds, according to officials. The dramatic and carefully planned assault took Russian President Vladimir Putin and his forces completely unaware. Indeed, there are a lot of questions surrounding what just took place, what the Ukrainians did to the Russians. Some are even speculating that this is like Russia's Pearl Harbor moment. We're going to have a few more things to say about that in a moment. Also from the New York Post yesterday, are we facing tech extinction? An Oklahoma tech expert predicted that artificial intelligence will become so omnipresent on the planet that Earth, with a current estimated population of about 8 billion, will have just 100 million people left by the year 2300. So that is the 24th century. Well, I do think that the Lord is only going to permit humankind to get into things like AI, genetic manipulation, experimentation so far before he inevitably has to return. I don't think that that's something which is just going to be permitted to go on indefinitely. But people are raising the awareness, especially, you've got a population of 8 billion, you're going to go down to 100 million. Why is that the case? Is it going to be because of warfare, or is it going to be because more people are so sucked into this matrix that they don't have time for relationships, they don't have time for procreation, raising a family, that sort of thing? Those are factors which you see certainly from science fiction. People are so sucked into their electronic devices that They have no time for in-person, actual human relationships. They've got virtual relationships, but not like with an actual other human being. All right, this was a difficult post I had to read through, which I ran across on X, formerly Twitter, and it talks, and it's a response from a Jewish person to obviously someone who's Arab, pointing out what looks like a baby trapped under rubble in Gaza. But here the question is, you've spoken out admirably against Hamas's brutality. You've also acknowledged on multiple occasions how Hamas pressures journalists in Gaza to push certain narratives and suppress others. So here's my question. As observers of the conflict and consumers of media in general, how are we supposed to distinguish between what's real and what's manipulated, fabricated, or exaggerated? Yeah, like, is that an actual baby underneath rubble, or is it some kind of a rubber doll? We don't know. We can't tell. So he does respond, I have no doubt that innocent babies have died in this war. That's the tragic, horrific reality of it. Absolutely. And it's something which should be gut-wrenching for us. It's something which should be very sobering for us. It's something which should cause us to pause and pray for those who are affected by the war, whether they are Israeli, whether they are Gazan, whomever. War is terrible. War is itself a crime. But here you see the person says, in the stills you shared, the baby supposedly pulled from the rubble and the rescue worker holding them don't have a single scratch on them. That's odd. And the journalist who posted this footage per the watermark is Anas al-Sharif, a known Hamas member. That's not speculation. It's been confirmed through open source evidence and by the IDF. So yeah, the first casualty in war is always the truth. And what we need to be praying for as the people of God, because of this Israel-Hamas conflict, all of the different conflicts, is for the people involved, the civilians, the men, the women, the children who are not fighting, for them to turn to their Creator for help, because only the salvation of Yeshua, the salvation of Jesus, is the only answer to any of this. And yes, I'm not totally convinced that is an actual infant, that is an actual baby. But look, innocents have died on both sides in this conflict. That's what war is. That's what makes war so repulsive. So I thought that was important because, in your Messianic congregation on Shabbat, you doubtlessly are going to pray for Israel, and you're going to pray for the release of the hostages. But are you praying that Israel's adversaries have an encounter with the living Yeshua? Are you praying for peace to ultimately prevail? For the IDF to, let's get this job done and let's begin the rebuild? That's what something like this prompts me to sort through. All right, so here's a post I ran across yesterday on X. This has got a lot of people upset and a lot of people responding to it from the channel Protestia. Anti-Right says abortion allowable in cases of rape, incest, and mental health of the mother. Okay, now I'm pointing this out to you because anyone who has gone through a theological education, certainly in the past 50 to 60 years, when you take classes on ethics, morality, what you're going to encounter in ministry, inevitably the topic of abortion and what are you going to do comes up. And you have to sort through various hypothetical scenarios. Now, all of us agree that abortion as a form of birth control is wrong. It is egregious. It is murder. Okay. And actually, when you make abortion illegal, and we're going to use the United States as a frame of reference, in a particular state, you make it effectively illegal, as a form of birth control, you eliminate 99% plus of the abortions, because most abortions which take place are because a couple which has had sexual intercourse, most probably an unmarried couple, doesn't want to take responsibility for their mistake when they could have used contraception. So abortion as birth control, when you make that illegal, well over 99% of abortions are eliminated. But anyone who has had to sort through the ethics of abortion in their theological studies has had to, okay, abortion as a form of birth control is wrong, that is immoral, but inevitably there's going to be some instance come where terminating a pregnancy to save the life of a mother might have to take place, as terrible as that is. And then that raises the question of, well, what about other possible reasons for terminating a pregnancy? This is what people in theological studies have to sort through as they prepare for ministry, even if it's just hypothetical. And so that is what N.T. Wright, agree with him or not, is raising. What about rape, incest, mental health of the mother? And everyone has to, who's in ministry, has to sort through this, at least hypothetically. And that's normally where you say, look, this is something which has to be considered on a case-by-case basis, and it is to be kept confidential between a husband and wife, their doctor, their religious clergy. Now, in the Messianic community, one of the things which we need to keep in mind here is how we are affected not only by a theological heritage from evangelical Protestantism, which is pro-life and generally is going to look at abortion as murder, but would recognize probably some exceptions like to save a life of a mother, possibly rape, incest, health of the mother, things like this. In the Jewish theological tradition, which we also definitely inherit as a Messianic community, the Jewish theological tradition tends to be much, much, much more permissive when it comes to terminating the life of a child in the womb. It tends to be much more permissive when it comes to possible reasons for an abortion. In all my time and all the 30 years I've spent in the Messianic community, these have never been mentioned, much less discussed. But yet we know that the Jewish community we're supposed to reach with the good news of Yeshua, it is extremely progressive, it's extremely liberal, and if we can't have some of these hypothetical discussions, at least from the side like this, like N.T. Wright says, from time to time, how are we going to be able to sort through how the Jewish community, which we're supposed to be relevant to, approaches this topic? So I thought this was important to raise. No, I'm against abortion, and certainly as a form of birth control. Issues like to save the life of a mother, rape, incest, mental health, those have to be considered on a case-by-case basis and often only as an absolute last resort. But guess what? That has always been the case throughout historical Judaism and Christianity. So this idea of no abortion at any time for any reason, that is much more of a creation of fundamentalist Christianity and it being politicized. So no, this is not an easy issue. But keep in mind, you make abortion illegal as a form of birth control, you've eliminated well over 99% of the whole abortion issue. Then you come down to more of these medical and situational reasons. And as I said, everybody who goes into ministry that gets a theological education, you have to reason with these, at least hypothetically. And Judaism is a lot more permissive when it comes to abortion than evangelical Protestantism is. All right, here's another really controversial thing, which is making the rounds right now. This is from Rick Joyner of Morning Star Ministries. Some of you all may remember the Mike Bickle scandal going back a year and a half with IHOP Kansas City. Well, Rick Joyner, who's also part of the charismatic movement. Rick Joyner affirms Mike Bickle and his continued leadership in Rant, posted today. Mike Bickle has been one of the great leaders in the body of Christ in our time, and his time's not up. He may just be coming to what he's ultimately supposed to do. So he's saying that in spite of all the drama associated with Mike Bickle and the investigations and him having to step down, he should be able to be restored to ministry. And guess what? There are a lot of people, charismatics, who are saying, no, this gives the charismatic movement a bad name. He committed some egregious sins. They'd be of the position, of course he can be forgiven. That's what the Lord died for. But he can't go back into ministry. His ministry is over. And indeed, when you see this conflict emerge, the one strike policy, you commit something of this level, you're gone from ministry. We can forgive you, but you can never be in ministry. You can never be in a position of teaching, leadership, spiritual influence again. So this is one of these things that's going to flush out a lot of people and what their worldview and what their values are. Okay, two more stories. This is from X today, early this morning. Israel has eliminated the entire Hamas command and leadership in Gaza, including all brigade commanders, battalion commanders, police commanders, banking chiefs, and internal security chiefs. They're all wiped out. The Gaza brigade commander is the only one left to hunt. Okay, how accurate is that? How inaccurate is that? We definitely know that Israel, IDF, is trying to do a thorough job in the situation in Gaza. Okay, and then finally, our last story, and this is from yesterday, June the 2nd, from the Kiev Post. The second round of Ukraine-Russia negotiations took place on June the 2nd at Istanbul's historic Siragin Palace, hope I pronounced that properly, and ended after barely an hour. Okay, so whatever just happened with the Ukrainian drone attack on Russia, particularly their nuclear bombers, I am expecting, although I pray that I'm wrong, the tensions between Russia and Ukraine to continue to build. And, what are we going to see? What are we not going to see? How close are we going to possibly get to the brink? Hopefully, cooler heads will prevail. But at the same time, we definitely know that you're going to hear about wars and rumors of wars in the last days. I think this is ultimately going to be something like that, and we might see a Cuban Missile Crisis type standoff. But yeah, we need to see the situation resolved, because if it does not get taken care of, Russia does have a major nuclear arsenal, and they are known for their military prowess and their technological superiority in many cases. So as terrible as the situation is, we need to see an honorable peace emerge between Russia and Ukraine. All right, so that covers a lot. Yes, we did discuss more of the contemporary religious news, and as you can see with a number of those points, on some of that religious news does challenge each and every one of us to dig deeper into the Word, to dig deeper into some of these major philosophical matters and theology, things which, yes, are very uncomfortable, but everyone has to sort through them at a particular time. So we go day to day and we see what things are happening so we can be effective as believers and be secure in our faith. As always, on behalf of Outreach Israel Ministries and Messianic Apologetics, I would like to sincerely thank you for your ongoing prayers, encouragement, and donations toward all of our ministry efforts. You can give online at outreachisrael.net/support. We'll see you again tomorrow with another episode of Messianic Insider. Until then, may God bless you, shalom, and take care.